Hey everyone, welcome to day 5 tutorial. I will run you through this and I just want to look ahead to day 6 a little bit before we get too far. So what I want to start with is class objective for day 5. You're trying to really help them reflect on the literacy sponsorship narrative and how that assignment worked, how from one draft to the next. And the structure of the assignment sort of as a whole, so that they can start to get their heads wrapped around how this class works now that they've taken a step into it. You're also helping them start to think of writing as a transition from straight linguistic text to a multimodal text that communicates through visuals or audio elements as well, and seeing that as a form of literacy that they can use. And you're also previewing some of the visual design components that you're going to talk about in the next couple of classes. So this is the part about class 6. Their homework after class 5 is to read through some slides on visual rhetoric and to watch a short video on the CRAP method of visual analysis. I recommend you watch both of those, read both of those before day 5, so that you can really understand the terms that they're going to have to learn over the weekend. You'll have an opportunity to really draw out these terms through conversation, and if you've got them on the tip of your tongue already, you'll do a better job with that. So I suggest you read ahead before day 5. They're pretty quick, but just take a look at those. First thing on day 5 is a free written letter about Project 1. This is a letter to you, where they're explaining how the work process worked for them, how well they think the project turned out. There's some questions in the binder that'll guide you through that, and you can put them on the board, give them about 15 minutes to write their letter, and hand it to you at the end. If some folks get done early, you can have them share and compare their experiences. It's a good time for that. I have 20 minutes allotted for this. Decide for yourself how much time you think it should take. I would give them a good amount of time to write that letter so that they actually get some real thinking done, and some real feedback for you about how the assignment went. Next thing you're doing is you're going over the prompt for Project 2. This probably won't be a very long time. I doubt they'll have a whole lot of questions at this point. They'll probably have more questions as things go on. So just walk them through the prompt for Project 2. Remind them, and you might need to hit this hard, that the multimodal text that they're making is one half, and the design reflection is the other half, where they're really explaining what they made and how it works, using design terminology. So both halves are equally important, and that they and their partners will be working on both of them together. That's the biggest point, I think, to hit so that they get it. From there, you should assign them into partners groups. If someone is missing, use your class roster to account for them in a pair. There might only be one person there today, in which case form them into a trio for work today. They can still discuss it with with some other pair and get a good value out of today's class. But then once the other person comes in, they can pair up with them more effectively. So partners have been assigned. The partners are going to share and compare their Project 1 narratives. They should read them to each other, would be a really great thing for them to do. But if they're not comfortable with that, which a lot of them won't be comfortable with that, they can hand them over and read across each other. They're trying to come up with moments where their stories align, moments where they're talking about similar issues, moments where they're talking about similar experiences, moments where they really diverge from each other in terms of their experiences. Just important points where their narratives touch. These are going to be good focuses for them to think about as they're making their collage. They won't necessarily know what they want to make yet. Maybe they will. Maybe they'll spend some of this time talking really practically about how they want it to look. But they might not, and that's fine. I have 15 minutes set aside for that. I think that's a good amount of time, especially if you remind them at this point that one piece of their homework is to come in with 3 elements for their collage, whether that be some pictures or flyers or pieces of writing that they did in high school, or audio of themselves giving a speech, or whatever it happens to be. But 3 things that might go into their collage or inform their collage somehow is what they need to bring next time. So if you remind them of that when they get together in pairs here, when they're sharing and comparing Project 1s, that would be a good time for them to really know that they can get something out of it, even if they're not sure what yet. The final big activity for today is examining model collages and trying to practice identifying design elements within them. We practiced this during staff meeting. There is a Google slideshow on Canvas under model student work, which I think is a category near the top, that includes a whole bunch of different collages, some of them created by students, some of them created by visual artists. There's also some audio collages in there, I think 3 or 4 of them. Listen through those and decide which ones you might want to show if you're having your students do audio collages as well. The activity that I describe in the binder is one that uses small groups. I think we did this in small groups during staff meeting of say 4 students who look at the image on the board and try and figure out how many design elements they can identify. And as we saw last time, there's a red heart with a black box around it. In the very center of that heart, there's 2 skeletons embracing. The lighting comes in from whatever side. They can get really granular if they want to, and in fact, the more granular they get, the better they're demonstrating to the rest of the class how to do visual analysis. Essentially, they're teaching each other during this section. Your role is to show the images, to decide on how long you want to put them up and how they're going to respond to them. And then as they're describing the elements that they find, to draw out useful vocabulary and useful ways of analyzing visual texts. So that's where knowing the crap terms comes in handy, so that when they say contrast, you can jump on it and have them explain what they mean by contrast. How do they see the contrast? The point of this activity is really to preview for giving them these design terms over their homework for the next class, so that they've got an experience to touch into. The activity, as I describe it here, uses chalkboards. I think that that's a really good way for them to keep track of the observations that they note. You might give them, I say 30 seconds, you might give them a minute and a half or so of looking at the thing and taking notes on the chalkboard together before they decide how many elements they found. That'll give a bit more detail and allow them to really debate as a group more. Or you could do it in a more rapid-fire way with smaller groups, even with pairs, where they're calling out what they see. Decide on a format that makes the most sense to you. The one in the binder will work fine, but if you need to cut this down in time, there are good ways to do that by by lowering the size of the groups generally, and making the writing involved in it smaller, so that they're not having to write out or take notes on all the things that they see. That's the ideal, because they'll pay more attention to it. But if you need to cut the time, then it can be something they discuss and then just share back orally. Homework: read the visual design slides, which are on Canvas. Watch the video, which is also on Canvas. Bring in 3 design elements next time. They should be physically brought in as much as possible. If they're some kind of digital format, then they need to make sure they have access to it during class. After this Friday, you have access to all of their literacy sponsorship narratives. You can start responding to them now if you want to. Or you can put them off for a few days if you need to, because of, for instance, comps. But just know that you've got them now. You can start sorting through them. You can start identifying who hasn't turned one in. That's probably the one thing I would suggest you look at if you look at nothing else, is just to see who hasn't turned something in yet. so that you can follow up with them via email or first thing on Monday. They may have missed something or messed something up, or they may just need a little bit of encouragement. So that's day 5. I would love to hear how it goes if you want to stop by and talk to me about it. And I hope you have fun with it.